I would now like to welcome Cecilia Isabel Pajuelo Reyes from the University of Mendoza to discuss epidemiological and spatial analysis of COVID-19 cases in native Amazonian communities from Peru.
Hello, and I share my presentation. Right, it's good?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Cecilia Pajuelo and I am a master's student at the Institute of Tropical Diseases in Amazonas, Peru. In this opportunity, I will talk about my research, epidemiological and spatial analysis of COVID-19 cases in native Amazonian communities from Peru. Let's start describing the COVID-19 situation in Peru. Here we have the novel coronavirus daily cases between February 2020 to January 2029. The first case in Peru was the first weeks of March, and 1 week later, the government declared the lockdown. And the lockdown finished in July. This period, several additional measures was given for the government. About Amazonas, the first case was reported in April, and 1 month later in Condorcanqui. It is in May. Inside the blue area, we can see the time frame considered for our study, which started in April and finished in July 29th. But where is Amazonas and where is Condorcanqui? Amazonas is a tropical region located in the northeast of Peru. Our study site, Condorcanqui, is a province located in the north of Amazonas, sharing border with Ecuador and the other region, Loreto. Our study site, Condorcanqui, is the difficult access. From the capital, Chachapoyas, you have to travel 12 hours by car and then take a boat for several hours until you reach the communities. The time depends on the accessibility of the community, but the importance of this province is the more than 300 native communities living here. About native communities, in Condorcanqui, these live on the banks of Santiago rivers without road access and having the river as the primary means of transportation. The population of these communities belong to ethnicities, Awahum and Wampis. And until now, communities preserve the culture without a lot of external influence. In the picture on the left, we can see the traditional houses in a community of Condorcanqui, and in the picture on the right, we can see the Santiago rivers. About the current situation in these communities is really worrying. They have several economical and social difficulties. First, the lack of basic service such as electricity, drinking water, and sewage. The second, the presence of infectious diseases such as HIV, malaria, and other parasitic diseases. And third, the poverty and malnutrition causing severe anemia. And finally, the difficulties to access this area, which could result in a late intervention, diagnosis, and treatment. For that reason, the purpose of this study was to analyze the characteristics of COVID-19 cases in native Amazonian communities from Condorcanqui during the first months of the pandemic. About the methodology, initially, COVID-19 cases were detected only by rapid tests in patients with symptoms. It's important to mention that this was the main strategy in the country, Peru, performing RDT in suspected and closed cases. The epidemiological survey included demographic information and clinical characteristics such as symptoms, signs, and comorbidities. With these information provided by the DIRESA, the database, we performed descriptive analysis, spatial temporal analysis, and multivariate analysis of death risk. The spatial analysis showed the rapid spread of COVID-19 cases in the north of Amazonas, especially in the Condorcanqui province, in the red. In June and July, the north reported significant higher areas in contrast with the south. And this was surprising given the difficult access of these areas, especially during the lockdown. However, the condition and social characteristics of the population could have contributed to the spread of this disease. About general characteristics, Amazonas until July 29 had 1,100 of cases. Surprisingly, Condorcanqui had a higher incidence than Amazonas, but a lower death rate. The question is, why is this? About the characteristics of COVID-19 cases only in Condorcanqui, we have 85% of symptomatics and 58% of adults between 30 to 59 years old, and followed by the young adult, 23 years old, 23%. It's important to mention that both represent the economically active population. On the other hand, the distribution of cases was similar between females and males. Now, regarding the ethnicities, since most of the population in Condorcanqui is native. For that reason, I wasn't surprised that 77% were from ethnicities, either Wampis or Oahuin. Finally, the most occupations were housewives and farmers. And about the spread, the COVID spread in Condorcanqui, here's a map of Condorcanqui in north of Amazonas. And each point represents one community or village. The intensity of each point represents the number of cases. We observed that most of cases were in important villages and communities. For example, Nieva, the capital, which is the center of commerce and the principal entry of the province. Furthermore, it's important to say that the financial aid was given by the government in these important villages and communities. For that reason, we consider the intermobilization the principal reason of the spread. And in this graphic, we can observe the number of cases between May to July in Condorcanqui. Positive cases detected by RTT are shown in a black curve, and in the pink curve, we can observe the symptoms onset of these cases. The 2 weeks gap let us believe that we are arriving late for COVID-19 detection in this place in Condor. Not only for Condorcanqui, but for the entire of the region. That is why our institute invests time and effort to get the certification for molecular testing in the region. In this moment, we do a molecular test. Additionally, a multivariate risk analysis was also performed in closed cases, meaning recovered cases and death. For this analysis include general characteristics, symptoms, signs, and comorbidities. The interpretation of these results are based on hazard ratio and confidence intervals. If hazard ratio, HR, is more than 1, represent a death risk factor, but if the hazard ratio is less than 1, represent a protective factor. For that reason, we showed a 7 significant death risk factor. The first, in general characteristics, age more than 60 years old, male sex, in symptoms, respiratory difficulty, and things, dyspnea, and comorbidities, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and renal diseases, which is similar with other reports. But in other hands, native Amazonian communities was a protective factor. It's is less than 1 per hazard radio. This could be for different reasons. One reason could be the different immunological response in the population, for genetic or other syndemics. And the other reason could be the lower presence of comorbidities in these communities. Finally, about Condorcanqui, the death risk analysis showed 3 significant risk factors. In general characteristics, age more than 60 years old, in symptoms, respiratory difficulty, and in signs, dyspnea. It is similar with Amazonas. About the conclusion of this study, the cultural tradition and behavior could explain the rapid spread of COVID-19 cases and higher incidence in Condorcanqui province than in the rest of the Amazonas region. A better strategy for surveillance and diagnosis is necessary for the control of COVID-19 cases in native Amazonian communities. Our multivariate analysis of death risk shows native Amazonas ethnicities as a protective factor for death, but however, further research is required. About studies about syndemics with other intestinal parasitosis, or maybe malaria or HIV, and post-vaccination will be crucial for understanding the real impact of the disease. And the acknowledgement, we thank all investigators of the Institute of Tropical Diseases at Toribio Rodriguez de Mendoza University, to Regional Directorate of Health for providing the data, and the regional government of Amazonas. And finally, we thank Fondesit for the funding. And thanks for your attention, and any questions?
Thank you for your presentation. We do have a question. So the first question we have is, how is the health system availability in the Amazonas compared to the rest of Peru? Is it possible that it also contributes to the higher incident of COVID-19 mortality?
Yes, and the health system in Amazonas, especially in Condorcanqui, is more precarious than other parts of Peru, and the health system don't have enough materials for diagnosis, for treatment, and the accessibility to areas in Condorcanqui difficult give this treatment in the exact time. And for that reason, it's necessary the surveillance and more active detection in this region. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really
Another
cool.
question.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Payam. So one question we do have is, did fires and internal displacement make the situation worse?
I'm not sure about that. Could you repeat, please?
Yes, did any fires or internal displacement in the region make the situation worse?
I think you mean forest fires, for example, right? I don't know if this is this an issue in the region?
About the region?
Yeah.
The region is insulated for others. Maybe the communities, the access is really difficult to enter, and the culture is very important for these communities, because they have a special culture, which not permit the access of other cultures, for example, mestizos or European, and it's difficult to contact with these communities.
And if I can just jump in, I wonder, Cecilia, if that's a really important feature, that perhaps not only they're isolated in the context of having excellent healthcare, but also exposure to a number of pathogens, building up their immune response, just broadly speaking, might result in them being more susceptible? And also, has anybody ever looked at their genetics and whether their immune response is
Yes.
you know?
Yes, about the immunological response, or about the death rate reported on Condorcanqui, and the other about the in death risk analysis, the ethnicity was a protective factor. And in this moment, we have a lot of possibilities. One is the immunological response for genetics, for example, for HLA genes, and the other maybe is for different response for a lot of infection present in this population. Maybe the other infection affect the immunological response in this population, but we have to study more for answer this question, and maybe do a more extent study for analyze this protective factor.
If I may jump in, Cecilia, this was a really fascinating talk, really interesting, extremely important topic as well. So a few years ago, I attended a talk that was examining the microbiota of some Amazonian native populations and showing how severely different it is, let's say, to people in North America and so on. And that particular study actually went back, and of course, there's a lot of different factors that can change the bacteria, but that study tried to associate this with sort of eating processed foods in more urban areas, right? So fast food, etc., the kind of food that we get at the supermarket, compared to the native Amazonian communities. So my question being, knowing that the source of food and nutrition is very different, and it can influence the bacteria in the gut, and also knowing that this bacteria in the gut can influence
in immunological response.
Exactly, and exactly. So
yes.
I'm really curious if you have any comments on that, or because, you know, doing microbiology is relatively simple to doing a lot of the other tests, if that's something that you could look at to see if there is a correlation with severity.
Yes, and the microbiology could be a good factor for the immunological in the whole population. And in the case of Condorcanqui, the Condorcanqui, we have a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables, and this is the principal the principal research about the nutrition of this in this place. For example, but we have difficulties in this because we had a malnutrition. Maybe because these resources is sale to other person, and not for their consume. It's really interesting to understand the alimentation of the nutrition of these communities, and related with the immunological response, and maybe with COVID-19.
Very interesting. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
There's one other little question, if I might ask. Did you see differences whether they were males or females, or the age of these individuals, again, in the context of sex, males and females being more or less susceptible in the context of death, more severe disease?
Yes, about the death, about our analysis of death risks, And we analyzed the sex, the male sex, and the age more than 60 years old. And both are the death risk factor, a significant death risk factor, and in our analysis. It's similar with all the studies and reported, no?
Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for answering all of our questions and for your amazing presentation. Some more questions might appear in the Q&A section. So if you would like to keep an eye on that and just type your answers, that would be really appreciated.